You're listening to The Higher Ed Marketer, the podcast for marketing professionals in higher education. Join us every week as we talk to the industry's greatest minds in student recruitment, donor relations, marketing trends, new technologies, and much more. If you're looking for conversations centered around where marketing in higher ed is going, this podcast is for you. Let's get into the show.
Hey, welcome to the Higher Ed Marketer Podcast. I'm Bart Kaler, and today's episode is a part of our special ZeeMee Summer Series. You know, ZeeMee is the student community platform that's been shaping enrollment for over a decade now. ZeeMee knows what signals actually drive enrollment, and they're helping colleges act on all that data. You know, Gen Z students open ZeeMee an average of 13 times a day. It's where they find their people, explore college options, and build a sense of belonging, long before they ever set a foot on campus. And it's working. Students in ZeeMee are twice as likely to apply, over 3 times as likely to commit, and 50% likely to melt. They're about to launch some new products that are going to give colleges access to the biggest and most real-time set of student data in higher ed and tell you exactly what to do with it, allowing a deeper level of understanding of your students, more personalized comms approach, and maximizing your recruitment efficiency. Want to make your recruitment more personalized and more powerful? Visit ZeeMee.com and tell them the Higher Ed Marketer sent you. And Troy, I am so excited about this conversation that we have today. Why don't you set it up for us?
It is about scaling connection. And after our listeners hear this conversation, I think it is even better titled Scaling Authentic Connection.
Yeah.
Today, yes, we are talking to Sacha Thieme. She is the Associate Vice Chancellor and Executive Director of Admissions at Indiana University Bloomington. Now, her credentials are many. She brings over 2 decades of enrollment experience and has been leading IU's undergraduate admission efforts with a sharp focus on strategy, student connection, and digital innovation. As both a campus leader and an IU alum, she combines data-driven thinking with a deep commitment to helping students feel like they belong even before they arrive on campus.
Yeah.
We're excited to dive into how she and her team are scaling community, and again, authentic community, and building one of the most engaged incoming classes in the country. I was inspired by this. Yeah. I know we're both excited and we're stepping on one another. I will back up. I will let you sing her praises now.
Well, just as you described all that, it's one thing to read it on a piece of paper, but it's another thing to be able to say, man, that was a great conversation. Mm-hmm. And what we talked about and the way that she's using data, the way that she is really encouraging and empowering her team, it's really inspiring, and you can kind of tell why they're being successful. So I guess without anything else, let's get her into the conversation.
Sacha, to start off, what's something interesting or surprising that you have learned recently that our listeners would find useful?
I love this question. One of my favorite parts of working in a university is the culture of continued learning. Like, we're always learning. So now, without getting too serious too quickly in the conversation, it isn't likely a surprise that conversations right now are about budgets, resources, staffing, and they're frequent and they are ongoing. So building organizational capacity has been a research area that I am currently centered on, and I found it really to be insightful, helpful, and frankly comforting. The fact that there is a research need shows me that there are others who don't have it figured out, so we're researching it. But we say all the time in admissions that there isn't one part of our work that isn't entirely dependent on the effort of another individual or unit. So this research has helped think about intentionally and strategically how organizations are interconnected, non-linear environments. So with considerations for things like purpose and structure and governance and policy and culture, it's been really important to consider how we align our resources to meet those institutional objectives, like enrollment targets.
Sacha, thank you very much. And not surprisingly, the way that you answered that question leads us directly into the first topic that we want to talk to you about, and that is leading people and staying student-centered. Now, just to make sure that we are pointing this out, you're not only leading the admissions teams at IU, but you are also an alum. So if you would, what brought you back to campus, and how does that shape the way you approach your role?
I appreciate that. You know, I would argue that majority of us who work in this profession are really called to it by a deep personal connection to a fundamental belief in the power of education to lift and launch the lives of individuals, their families, and even their communities. So it's not only a path, but it is a calling. When I first came to IU as a first-generation low-income rural student, I had no idea what this experience would be. But you know, this place, coupled with faculty, staff, and even my fellow students, certainly contributed to a journey, and I would argue set me on a path that would not have otherwise been possible. So when I found, after a few years in the corporate workforce, that I could have a career where I could make this experience available to others, that seemed pretty amazing. And to be invited back to do this, fulfill this calling for the institution where my journey began, there was really no question that this would be part of my story. So I think I mentioned it's a calling for a lot of us, and this work can be hard, both emotionally and physically, but the spirit side of it, the why side of it, really makes it all worthwhile and keeps us going. So thanks for asking that.
It's funny how no one was ever asked as a child, what do you want to be when you grow up? And they said a higher ed administrator, please. And so I think that there are so many people that can totally understand where you're coming from. And especially as a first gen student, I know a lot of the audience knows that Troy and I are both first gen. And there's a love that we have for higher ed for the same exact reason, for the fact that, man, it really changed the trajectory of our lives. It changed our family, our futures, and everything else. And so I think that's really, really good. And I think one of the things you kind of alluded to earlier, just with your research and with, currently in the budget season and things, there's a lot of things right now in our climate that are really affecting higher education, affecting the admissions team. And so running that, and leading a flagship admissions team is no small feat. So what are some of the ways you've worked to retain and empower and support your team? Because I know that with the headwinds out there right now, with everything else going on, it can be a challenging time. So how are you kind of working on really empowering your team?
Would attempting all the things be an option?
It certainly can be.
I think over the years, the work just has continued to evolve. And so those of us who have been in the profession for a while, we have had to continuously reskill and upskill to ensure that we're meeting the needs of the changing students, the changing generations, and really the increased complexity of the work, the technology and data and everything that comes into this process. And I would say that while each new generation, let's say of staff, does require a refreshed approach, I think the fundamental themes still stand. They're looking for career growth, development, recognition, good culture, strong communication, and I would say in recent years we are blessed to lean into the important emphasis on balance and well-being. Right. I think we could have used that 20 years ago.
Yeah, I wouldn't have minded having that when I started my career. So
I know. So when it comes to leading a team, I think some things that we have really tried to lean into, we've introduced new communications channels. We've tried different approaches to how we coach and guide the team in developing and achieving goals. That having a target, having a goal in front of you only helps you have something to point toward, kind of take the scary out of that. Certainly, we're trying, with the pandemic, we're looking for what are the new opportunities for engagement and how do people want to engage? Sometimes it's hard to even articulate. But I will say I'm fortunate because the team that we're working with right now, goodness, they bring an inherent drive toward quality, success, and service that I could never train. So trying to kind of get out of the way sometimes, I think has been an important part of the leadership. And especially in the last 5 years, I have seen them show up in the most difficult spaces without question or judgment, but with only a desire to contribute and make a difference.
Yeah, that's so refreshing, and I see that a lot with, especially some of the younger generations. And I speak as an Xer. I mean, a lot of people are getting younger, so it's the idea that. But even especially as I see Gen Z kind of enter the workforce, I see that desire to really make a difference and do things like that. And I wanted to follow up on that response that you had. Tell me a little bit more about those new communications within your team. I mean, when you say that, I'm like, are you talking about Slack or what types of ways are you doing that to help your team feel more connected?
Absolutely. So the university, quite frankly, moved to a Teams environment. I don't think that's uncommon. And so we have spent the last few years trying to understand how to leverage that tool. And what I like about it, differently than some of the previous tools where we had the chat feature, we still have that, but now we have taken all of our documentation for training and we call it the admissions knowledge base, and so it has all kinds of resources and documentation for process and talking points and all of that, and we can keep it updated in live time. And it also provides the space. We have sub-channels for pictures of IU and ways they can share fun news and updates. There were a lot of pet pictures for a while, right? So it's a multi-channel, multifunctional space.
I like that because I think what it demonstrates is not only are you student-centered as an admissions team, certainly you're going to be that to be a successful admissions team, but you're also demonstrating that by being so centered on your admissions team. I mean, the individuals that you're putting out there to hit the front lines, to engage with that. And I think the fact that you're demonstrating that through the ways that you are trying to engage on a personal level, even within your team, has got to be a great reflection for them as they start engaging with prospective students and parents. Maybe tease that out a little bit, because I mean, what's working in the way that your teams are kind of building those engagements and their confidence?
Well, I think also here I mentioned kind of the themes of staff retention haven't really changed. I think the themes related to the biggest concerns or questions from parents and students haven't necessarily changed dramatically over the years. Students and families are still most often concerned about cost and career outcomes and academic program options. And now we also are seeing more dialogue and inquiry about emotional and social components. Most certainly those are rising to the top. Will I find a college where I will fit? Will I make friends? Will I be able to get in? But also trends related to mental health, stress, anxiety, depression, and overall safety that we received those questions before, but I think we're just seeing that come through so much more. So I think when we have worked to empower our admissions team. I mentioned the knowledge base, make sure they have the information to answer confidently and with authenticity and with transparency. So we really want to help families and students make the best decisions, and they need access to the best information. They need access to the real information. We know Indiana is a great fit for so many students.
Right.
But it doesn't serve the student or the university if we describe an experience that doesn't really exist. So we really coach our team on providing that information. And for each of the areas, we work to provide multiple channels and options for students to get the information they need when they need it. As humans, right, we are flooded with information, but it isn't until I need to use it that I need to access to it. So we're really trying to use those different channels to provide that.
That's exciting.
Yeah.
Let's continue down that path and talk about how you're building this Hoosier community at scale, and sometimes even before the students arrive. Now, at IU, you are welcoming thousands of students every fall, and would love to know if you would share, what does it take for that many students to feel like they belong, and sometimes even before they arrive on campus?
I appreciate that. We really think about that engagement starting as early as possible. I mean, we have communications for 8th graders and, moving throughout the process. But in Indiana, we have so many gifts. But when it comes to the sense of belonging, I think the power of this community and the space really shine. I've had high school counselors ask me how I got Indiana University students to wear their IU gear during their visit, to which I say, if only I had that influence. But I think the reality is that Indiana University students are incredibly connected to and proud of their community, and the same with our alumni. And so when prospective students come through, we are trying to make that awareness part of their experience. The other piece that we are fortunate to have, it's intentional, but we have a firm belief that your physical environment can and should support your learning, your creativity, and even your wellness. We have a campus that is strategically designed to be both beautiful, one of the most beautiful in the country, and inspiring to support learning. So when you have these two attributes, we can leverage them throughout the process. So one is through campus visits, making sure the opportunities that we provide help students connect with the experiences that will be most important to them. But we know not every student can visit. So we've leaned into virtual since the pandemic. This has been, I think that's one of the good things that has come out of this experience. I'm sure you've heard that other places. We should have been in this space more, but now we use the virtual presentations. But I'll say this is where platforms like ZeeMee come in.
Yeah.
The entire structure in that social media community is designed to support community at scale. And it's just a really great fit, I think, with what I described about some of our intentionality. It allows us to carry that IU voice and experience into a platform where our prospective students were already present. And now we get to engage with them.
Well, as you say that, IU was one of the most engaged campuses on ZeeMee with, I believe, over 4,200 students actively building connections. And from that, what's been the most surprising thing that you've observed from that community?
Yeah, it has been exciting. And not just because I'm a little competitive, but once we hit the top 10, I was like, we have to stay here. So this is great. But I think what we're seeing is a powerful result of what happens when you connect institutional type with the appropriate technology. And so ZeeMee is such a perfect extension of our work. Because of the type of student that's attracted to Indiana University, they are deeply focused on community. That's with each other, their faculty, their campus. So to offer that type of engagement space is just a natural extension. So surprises, even though we know our prospective students pretty well, we were surprised to observe their willingness to engage so fully. And regularly, they're in there, and ZeeMee has these numbers, right? They're in there all the time, and they are truly engaging. We couldn't create that, if we had our own space or if it wasn't for the really strategic thinking and planning and knowledge of that ZeeMee team who know their audience and they know their craft. The other surprise that I will say, and we talked about leadership, is that it wasn't even really on my radar at the start, but the opportunity to watch our own IU admissions counselors and students connect with one another. So let's say in the live events, they're doing what they love, they're talking about IU, they're engaging with prospective students, but they're also feeding off of each other in this fun and lighthearted space. And so that, as a leader, has just been a really welcome surprise. They're the team that puts together the plan. They have fun ideating and creating new multi-focused content. So that's been a win I just didn't expect. So it's been a great match.
I am such a huge fan of ZeeMee because I love the fact that it's the students' turf and we're coming into that. And that's what I think makes the big difference. And I love those comments that you had just about how you love seeing your team engage with that and interact with that and how much how much it's an organic area too. That's one of the things I love about it, is that it is a fun place for students to be. They want to be there. They're coming there to consume information about your school. And I just think that's one of the great things. And so obviously your team is doing a lot in that platform, as well as the entire year. I mean, we've talked about the way your team is engaging with students and the campus visit and just being on campus. But I also know that there's a time when admissions doesn't have control anymore, and there is a pass the baton to the next team. And I know you guys have you work really closely with IU's first year experience team. So describe how that collaboration helps the students with the onboarding, because that's where a lot of times we work with a ton of schools and I see the baton dropped many times. They fumble it through orientation or that first week experience. So talk about how it's more than just a handoff at IU.
Well, we have taken this really seriously to the point that we've built it into organizational structure. So first year, the new student orientation component of that transition is actually in my portfolio. So we see, the way we view this is that the experience should flow from recruitment all the way through new student orientation and into the first year, into that first year experience with our partners in student life. And the team that works with orientation, they have been a part of enrollment management since they started. And so that intentionality of this is the final stage of the enrollment process is very much at our forefront. We have been tracking for years, actually, the number of students who say they're going to multiple orientations. So we know that they're not done, and we're mindful of that when we're offering this experience. So you'll see admissions staff at orientation events. You'll see orientation staff at admissions events. And so we're thinking about that student's transition from the point of first inquiry. Our communications need to be consistent, how we weave messaging and experiences in a way that creates an onboarding experience that is natural and seamless, needs to start at the very beginning. And so we have found that alignment and intentionality has really helped us create exactly what you mentioned. Like, we want to have a collaboration, not necessarily a handoff. It needs to be consistent. Yeah, I appreciate that question.
Yeah, and since we are the Higher Ed Marketer podcast, I have to put in a marketing question with the idea of, you're doing such a good job with that first year experience team and your collaboration with Student Life to share that. How are you making sure that your collaboration with marketing is the same to make sure that you've got that consistent messaging coming across your journeys, your platforms, that what you're saying in ZeeMee matches up what's being put out through all the conflows and the branding and the advertising?
It's very similar. It really starts with being true partners from the beginning. So the beginning of the ideation, we ideate together. We include our marketing team in discussions about more than just marketing. They're in our process discussions, our strategy sessions, even our logistics conversations, anything that helps them stay informed on really all aspects of admissions. So we're in constant daily communication about about what we're seeing, what's working, what needs to adjust. We have a channel that when our inbound call team gets questions, they start posing them, and our marketing team is right there with us to see what those trends are. The other piece that I think that has been really helpful for messaging across the student journey is scaffolding. So we partner with university level marketing as well as enrollment management, so that the university level marketing, they're doing the brand awareness, they're doing the big picture, generating energy and insight into that IU opportunity. And then we come in with the process and start to speak to students based on what they really need to make that college choice. And then our academic and program partners come in later in the spring with even more specific information. So we find this translates really well across the enrollment cycle, so that as a student's interests become more specific, so does the type of communication they receive.
One thing I really like about everything you've talked about and the intentionality that you have with your org structure, which I applaud, at the end of the day, the students and the parents don't care. They just look at it and say, that's IU. That's where I'm going. And everybody from their perspective is a part of the admissions team. It doesn't matter. I mean, they just know that these people are helping me get to school. So, and I just say that for our audience to take a note here with what Sacha's talking about, because I think it's way too easy to say, well, that's not my job, or that hasn't been our job traditionally. That is going to be the death nail of way too many successful programs, is to say it's not my job. Figure out how you can collaborate with others. So that's your public service announcement from your host. But is there anything you would add to that, Sacha? I mean, I kind of jumped in there, but I'm curious your thoughts on what I just said.
No, I really appreciate that. That was one of the things I observed when we got here. We are so fortunate to have excellent people doing excellent. Yeah. And what we needed to do was really think about how we could get moving in the same direction.
Yeah.
So that the student, if we tell our team, like, if we do our job well, they don't really even know we're here.
Exactly.
We just provided this pathway for them to go on and have this magical experience. But in order to do that, everything needs to be working together.
Yeah, it needs to be invisible to them. So very good.
Sacha, Bart and I wanted to make sure we highlighted your strategic use of data and tech in admissions, because your office is known for being data savvy. So if you don't mind sharing some secrets, what key insights are you tracking throughout the cycle that, quite frankly, others might overlook?
Well, I do love that I say that in enrollment, I get to use my heart and my head in different ratios every day. So the data part is part of that equation. And I know that so many of our peers are leveraging data in creative and powerful ways. But we have a few that have helped us specifically understand and serve both our enrolling and our current students. Like many, we partner with external research firms to understand the mindset of prospective students and admitted students and how maybe they shift over the process. But what's been even more helpful is we've equipped our academic recruitment partners with this information. So they have program-specific information on these mindsets to understand how students in their programs may look a little different. And so that has been helpful for their marketing and recruitment efforts. When it comes to the application process, we have spent the last decade researching the high school curriculum of every applicant to understand which courses and sequence of courses best prepare them for success. And so that's been really helpful, not just in the admissions process, but thinking about retention efforts and understanding of changing curriculum around the country. We've also then recently partnered with a research firm to look intentionally at academic programs and trying to think forward. So how can we know that many of the roles that our students are going to be entering don't exist yet, but how can we imagine what those might be and how we can start to make sure that we're offering those program offerings that are going to be most important to those career needs. And then I'll just say something that I'm really excited about that's been just really recently is we've taken another look and continued look at our retention data, and then we've leveraged that to go all the way back to the start to develop new enrollment, scholarship, and student success initiatives. So we, in our office, we have always had a recruit to retain philosophy.
Right.
But this opportunity really has put that philosophy into practice. So that's just been really fulfilling and exciting.
That is exciting, and I do think that, I mean, a lot of what you talked about is that, hey, we're using this research group, we're using this data, we've been doing this for a while, we've been looking at that. Obviously, a lot is changing in the world. I mean, whether you look at generative AI, whether you look at other new tools that are coming online, a lot of corporate, and you mentioned coming from corporate, a lot of corporate practices are making their way down into the higher ed practice. And so I'm curious, with all the different flashy tools that are out there in enrollment tech and ed tech, how do you guys look at it to really figure out what's going to align with your goals and how it's going to work versus those ideas that just might be a distraction that you just don't want to follow too far because then you miss the mark?
You're right. There are so many, and we get contacts all the time. As kind of alluded to earlier, we have a strong mission and commitment to service. I know there was a recent article that circulated about customer service being a superpower.
Yeah.
So I had some team members that felt an extra boost of confidence, and then others we're more like, well, that's just daily. Like, that's just what we do. But we have tried to center our attention on the tools and platforms that create more efficiency so that our humans are freed up to do their most human work.
I just want to get up and applaud you right now. That is like my biggest thing. So keep going. You've got my full attention.
Well, good. Yeah, we agree. I mean, so this approach then has given us a sense of focus when we're considering the tools to prioritize. So we also evaluate for alignment with our existing processes, because when you're implementing a new technology, it can be really disruptive.
Yes.
And so, the goal should be to enhance or streamline what's working rather than to maybe overhaul or completely interrupt a system that actually serves us well and has the desired efficiency. So it's not just, I think you mentioned, it's not just introducing new technology for technology's sake.
Right.
We really need to think about where it is helping us achieve our goals. And so to this end, we really value efficiency and we value support for end users over the novelty.
Yeah.
So we're seeking to implement technologies that will support the mission rather than shaping our mission to around the available technologies.
I think that's good, because I think a lot of people do that. It's like, hey, I heard this CRM or this tool or this whatever. It's what I've got to get, so I'm going to get it, and we're going to adapt ourselves into that. Mm-hmm. And at the end of the day, you end up serving that tool rather than serving your student. And I just wanted to point out that, I mean, the reason I got excited about what you said about the being, allowing us to free us up to be humans and being relationship oriented, is that is the goal of technology, is for us to be more efficient. And I know a lot of people, people know me, know I'm into generative AI. I'm not into generative AI because I'm really this tech geek, even though I am in it because it helps me free up time to really do relational type things that a computer can't do. So if a computer can do your chores, let it do your chores so you can spend more time with the students and with the parents. And so this last question I have for you kind of goes along that line, because a lot of times I hear pushback from campus leaders or from different people that I engage with when I talk about a particular tool or I bring up something like ZeeMee, and it's even to the point of they might be hesitant to use predictive data or digital platforms because it's like, well, one, it's another tool, I don't want to lose, but a lot of times it's about, well, we're just going to lose the personal touch if we just focus on ZeeMee or something else. But it goes back to, I really think that there's more opportunity for that personal touch if you lean into this. So what would you say to that campus leader that'd be hesitant to use these tools because they feel like they're going to lose the personal touch?
Well, I commend them for wanting to retain that. It gets harder and harder to kind of stay true to that mission and that goal. But we find exactly the opposite. If you think about predictive data, it doesn't make the decisions for us, but it informs our decisions by helping us identify the trends or insights that we might miss, right?
Yeah.
There's just so much data. But these tools, we think they can actually strengthen our ability to connect with students in meaningful ways, for all the examples that you just gave. And just to double down, technology or data should never replace the human work. But the more that we can leverage the data and the technology in appropriate ways, we find the more informed, confident, and available we have made our team members, and the better they can design communications and programs and personalized outreach to support our students and the families and advocates and supporters of those students who are also looking for the best information and resources. So if done well and done appropriately, it does exactly what you said. It frees up the humans to bring the nuance to that experience.
Yeah. That's a mic drop. Troy, you can take it from here.
Yeah, I'm just going to let that simmer for a second. However, Sacha, we do have one last question for you to close out the episode, and it's one that we ask all of our guests. And if there was one final piece of advice for marketing or enrollment leaders looking to drive deeper engagement, what would that advice be?
Probably not going to be too surprising given where we've gone with the conversation, but as students and families are trying to size up the different institutions, it can be hard because in reality we sound really similar.
Yeah.
And so students need something uniquely you to tap into to assess fit. And so we start that, and I would say start that by listening. So much of our engagement comes down to understanding what students and families actually need. And we do that through the multiple channels I mentioned, to gather input and have those listening opportunities. But then we have to show up and show them that we're paying attention. So leaning into the multi-channel communication and engagement platforms, leveraging the unique opportunities for messaging and creativity, sure, but also ensuring that you are offering the information that is needed, and then just demonstrating that consistency in the voice and approach. And for us at Indiana, there's a personality type, and so we try, tone matters. We try to relay that in every space that we use. So in how we write our messaging, in how we set up the visits, in how we greet families when they arrive, they need to be able to tap into what is Indiana University. And so I think that can prompt deeper engagement for the student that can see, this is the community I want to engage in.
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah, and then if I can, I would finally say to our colleagues, like, hang in there.
Yeah.
Find ways to remind yourself of the importance of the work that you're doing, because that is important.
Go have lunch with some students. That'll help.
Go tap into the heart. I will go to the Welcome Center front desk and just greet families.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. Wow.
Sacha, that was wonderful and a nice way to end our conversation. Everyone, we've been speaking to Sacha Thieme. She is the Associate Vice Chancellor and Executive Director of Admissions at Indiana University. And Sacha, for those that would like to connect with you after this conversation, what would be the best way for them to do so?
I think all the usual channels now. LinkedIn is great. Email is great. I'd love to connect with colleagues. The community is important.
Very good. And thank you for a wonderful conversation that I think others will learn from and enjoy.
Thank you for the work that you do to provide this learning space for all of us.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Bart, do you have any final thoughts you would like to share before we turn this episode to the off position?
Thanks, Troy. Sacha, thank you so much for coming today. I really appreciate it. And thank you for your work at Indiana University and representing our state as well as you do. So I am real excited. I mean, I just love the fact of how intentional Sacha has communicated the intentionality that they are in Indiana. The idea of starting with your team, making sure that you are communicating and making sure that you've got that empowerment type of culture around you, whether that's through using teams, whether that's through using different ways and recognizing the fact that you've got multi-generations within your team that are serving a new generation many times with Generation Alpha coming up very fast. And so making sure that you've got that, and I love that intentionality, and then just being able to build that community at scale with tools like ZeeMee, with being intentional in the way that you are engaging even your internal team to start engaging with your prospective students and families, I think is really good. And then just the idea of how well that they are leaning into tech, being able to really understand your data. If you don't have that internally, find some people that can help you with that. And if you need that, I can point you in some directions. I'm sure that Sacha could follow up with you as well. But just being able to really educate yourself, go out and do some professional development at NACAC or case conferences or AMA, just so you can get up to speed on what you can do to really understand your data in a much more productive way. And so just, again, so grateful for the opportunity, Sacha, and it's been a great pleasure to get to know you better.
Thank you. Yeah, great to work with you.
Would like to end by offering our special thanks to our friends at ZeeMee for sponsoring the ZeeMee Summer Series. Please visit them at ZeeMee.com. ZeeMee is the watering hole that you need to add to your marketing enrollment toolbox. Thanks everyone for listening to the Higher Ed Marketer podcast. And if you've enjoyed this episode and learned from it, please subscribe to the show. Please leave us a review and share it with your colleagues in higher ed. And don't forget to follow us on LinkedIn at The Higher Ed Marketer for more updates and insights. Next week, we start a new Best of series, so you will not want to miss that. The Higher Ed Marketer podcast is powered by Kaler Solutions, your go-to partner for higher ed mission fit marketing strategies, enrollment, and branding needs, and sponsored by Ring Digital, your ad targeting experts for higher ed, putting you in front of your specific prospects and inquiries with provable, measurable increases in lift and yield. We will see you next week for another exciting episode of the ZeeMee Summer Series of The Higher Ed Marketer. Until next time, wishing everyone happiness and success in higher ed.